I was 8 years old, sitting in the school cafeteria, so excited to share my grandmother's homemade samosas with my friends. But the second I opened my lunchbox, the smell that meant love and tradition to me turned into, ew, what's that smell? Your food is so weird. And there I was, thinking my friends' peanut butter and pickles was the questionable lunch choice. Fast forward 9 years. I'm scrolling through Instagram when I see a viral post about exotic Scandinavian fashion and Buddha girl bangles. Except it's really just a lehenga with a dupatta, traditional Indian clothes, and those bangles look like they came from the back of my mom's closet. The ones she calls out of style. Yet the post never mentions South Asia. No credit to its roots, just profit stolen from tradition. And this is the American paradox. A country that prides itself on being a melting pot of diversity somehow manages to mock difference, then turn around and make money off of it. What was gross or weird yesterday is suddenly Instagram-worthy today. There's a name for this: cultural appropriation, which Richard Rogers of North Arizona University defines as the taking of elements from a subordinated culture by a dominant culture without reciprocity, permission, or compensation. Cultural appreciation, on the other hand, is respect, learning traditions from the people who lived them and honoring diversity instead of erasing it. So today, let's buy our own Starbucks chai latte as we first discuss the problem of cultural appropriation. Next, we'll sip on the consequences before finally brewing our own pot of chai and figuring out some authentic solutions. When I was in 3rd grade, my mom used to oil my hair every day to make it grow stronger. But other kids called me greasy, so I told her to stop. I quickly realized that differences were something to hide, not celebrate. But those exact same differences are trendy now. And that's the problem. Hair oiling is suddenly this revolutionary beauty hack that influencers won't shut up about. Yoga studios are making millions while barely mentioning that yoga is a spiritual Hindu practice. And that Starbucks chai tea, since chai literally means tea, we're paying for tea at $6 a cup. It's being sold everywhere like some exotic discovery instead of a cultural staple that costs pennies in India. This is cultural appropriation, and it follows a predictable pattern. First, marginalized groups are mocked for their traditions. Then those same traditions are repackaged for profit. I mean, consider the fashion industry. Luxury brands use ethnic patterns as design elements on their products, completely disrespecting their original meanings. Native American headdresses have become festival fashion, worn by influencers who have no understanding that each feather represents an act of bravery. Mexican Day of the Dead imagery gets slapped onto Halloween costumes, trivializing a sacred tradition of honoring ancestors who have passed. Stacy Finkelstein, a marketing professor at Stony Brook University, even found that white Americans often disregard Black culture's role in hip-hop, claiming the music is for everyone regardless of its origins. But why does this happen? The answer lies in power dynamics. Cultural appropriation thrives off of historical inequalities. Societies that once demanded assimilation now profit from the very diversity they once tried to erase. Now you might be thinking, so what? At least these cultures are getting attention. But the consequences run deeper than wounded pride. First, appropriation perpetuates harmful stereotypes. When cultural elements are extracted without context, they become caricatures. Think of how African American vernacular English is appropriated under the guise of Gen Z slang, or how Native American imagery is still commercialized by sports teams, advertisements, and consumer products. Second, it creates economic injustice. When corporations cheaply mass-produce versions of culturally significant items, it hurts the small businesses creating authentic and handmade goods. Even your local Chinese restaurant may be at risk because of that Panda Express down the street. Third, and perhaps most painfully, appropriation erodes cultural identity. When sacred becomes secular, communities lose control of their narratives, and the psychological impact is profound. A study by Patrick Corrigan, a professor of psychology at the Illinois Institute of Technology, being marked different leads to devaluation, challenging one's sense of identity and social standing. For young people like third-grade me, this creates an impossible choice. Hide your culture to fit in, or watch it get commodified without your consent. Because appropriation doesn't just erase culture, it weaponizes exclusion. It sends a very clear message to marginalized communities. Your heritage is only valuable when it is stripped from you and sold by others. It's exploitation, locking the original culture bearers out of power while rewarding outsiders who cherry-pick what they find marketable. And when one culture rewrites another's history, younger generations grow up disconnected from their heritage, believing their traditions are embarrassing unless validated by someone else. And that harm doesn't just echo through one generation, it multiplies across many, hollowing out culture until all that remain are empty shells of what once carried meaning. So, how can we create a healthy shift from appropriation back to appreciation? Let's throw out that Starbucks chai latte and brew a fresh pot of chai as we figure out some authentic solutions. First, we must start with education. University of British Columbia education professor Sandrine Han says institutions can combat stereotypes by teaching cultural literacy from an early age. When students understand the historical and emotional significance behind cultural elements, they're way less likely to appropriate them. Last year, my friends and I, of different ethnicities, dressed up in traditional Indian clothes and performed a Bollywood dance for our school's annual cultural fashion show, learning while also having tons of fun. Second, we need conscious consumption. Before adopting someone's culture, ask 3 questions. Do I understand the significance? Am I supporting authenticity? And would members of this culture feel respected or exploited by my participation? Third, we must demand better from corporations and the media and encourage the entertainment industry to promote accurate representations, not stereotypes. When famous K-pop group Blackpink disrespectfully portrayed a statue of Hindu god Ganesha in a 2020 music video, the backlash was swift. Hashtags like "my culture is not your aesthetic" flooded social media before the offensive scene was quietly edited out. This shows that public pressure works if we apply it consistently. And finally, we must acknowledge cultural differences and understand that some elements just aren't meant for outside adoption. That some traditions are sacred, not shareable. But appreciation isn't just about what we don't do, it's about something we actively do. Real cultural appreciation involves learning, supporting, and celebrating cultures on their terms. It means visiting cultural centers, supporting minority-owned businesses, and elevating authentic voices. It means understanding that when my grandmother teaches you to make chai, she's not just sharing a recipe, but a relationship. So today, we first discussed the problem of cultural appropriation, analyzed its consequences before figuring out some authentic solutions. The choice is ours. Will we build bridges between cultures, or will we continue taking from them? I know what I'm choosing. The question is, what will you choose? Because in the end, appreciation isn't just about respecting others. It's about respecting the best of ourselves. It's about building an America where kids like me don't have to choose between fitting in or honoring our heritage, where difference is a gift and not a liability, because that's the America we're fighting for. And it starts with each of us. One genuine connection, one act of appreciation at a time. Thank you.